Hi, this is Chris Kiefer, and welcome to the Power of ERDC Podcast. Today, we're talking about how ERDC enabled a military aviation milestone, the successful landing of an LC-130 Hercules cargo plane on a frozen freshwater lake. Joining us to discuss this feat is TJ Melendi, a research civil engineer at ERDC's Cold Regions Research and Engineering Laboratory. TJ, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just kind of walk us through this. I know it was a significant accomplishment back in March when the New York National Guard's 109th Airlift Wing landed an LC-130 at Parsons Lake in Canada's Northwest Territories. Just tell us the story of kind of how all that came to be.
Sure. So here at Carl within ERDC, we have a very close relationship with the 109th unit out of New York, who are responsible for flying the tenant LC-130s that are currently in operation for the Air Force. And through that relationship with them, Krell is heavily relied on for determining safe landing parameters and certifying landing areas for their skied aircraft. And as part of this mission that they had going on in March, they were trying to land on saltwater ice. And what was happening is that the ice wasn't as thick as they had hoped for and what they were planning on when they went out to test. So they actually ended up testing at 20 different locations on different sea ice. And all the locations were less than the 54 inches of required sea ice for that aircraft. So they weren't going to actually be able to land and carry out the mission. So they, of course, called us up here at Krell and asked us if we had any ideas. And one of the ideas that came to mind immediately was, well, since you're working in the northern region there, how about fresh water? And we kind of got some funny looks about that. Like, well, how do we know if it's fresh water or not? So we, I asked, like, okay, we can, test for salt. And they kind of looked at me and they're like, well, how do I do that? And I'm like, well, don't try drinking it. And then, that's when the pilots kind of thought like, well, I think that's how we're going to test this. So after a couple of visits to some local pool places in Canada, they were able to get some test kits and actually be able to test. And we ended up testing at another 10 locations that had fresh water, to determine if there was one that had at least a marginally suitable amount of ice that we could try to calculate the numbers to see if it was safe to land the aircraft at any load, mind you. Forget like heavy max load, which I guess would be a good point to point out that the LC-130, similar to a C-130, is 133-foot wingspan. It's 98 feet long and it has a height of 39 feet. So it's a pretty good size aircraft, and it has a maximum takeoff weight of 155,000 pounds. So we're not talking about a small aircraft here by any means. They actually found Parsons Lake. They found out that it had between 42 and 36 inches of freshwater ice. They determined that it was fresh water. They did actually, in fact, taste the water, which we did not suggest at all.
Don't recommend.
They can confirm that it was, in fact, dirty, but no salt. So we then started on our end here, trying to figure out if it was safe to land that type of aircraft at any load on freshwater ice. A big thing that I want to point out is we do a lot of research here at Krell on different types of ice. And one of those things that we look into is the difference between saltwater developed ice and freshwater developed ice. And the big thing between the two is freshwater ice is generally stronger than saltwater ice. The same thickness, primarily because of the salt in the seawater creating brine pockets, which then make the saltwater ice more flexible, especially in early stages of ice development and growth. So that's a big thing to remember here. Freshwater ice is stronger, so and has a higher flexibility strength. So tensile strength is much higher, flexural strength. So that's what we were basing this upon. We then went back and looked at some of the old work that we had done back in the 60s and the 70s with Ed and Krell and Erdick to determine if we had any safe perimeters that we could land on. And we did find that marginally there was some areas that we could find safety for them to at least run a test.
Yeah, sure. And I want to kind of walk through the whole story of it a little bit more. But to start with, you had how this kind of all started. I mean, you've done a significant amount of work with the 109th in the past, and that kind of led to you getting the call in the first place, right?
Yeah. So we've been working with the 109th here within Erdick for the last 15 years, really closely. That work has been on both the north and south side of the planet. So we work with them in Greenland. I actually developed the first landing criteria for a skiway at Summit Station, which is about 10,500 feet elevation in Greenland. And that skiway for the last 10 years has been the longest skiway in the world. It's 16,000 feet long. And it lands the LC-130 without any modification from how it currently configured is. And that's really where this started. And then, of course, down in Antarctica, once again, for the National Science Foundation, the 109th lands a lot of critical missions and cargo and personnel as well down in McMurdo in the South Pole.
Sure. And like you said, you've worked on those runways with them before. Was that the Pegasus project and Phoenix project?
Yeah. So yes, Pegasus was the first wheeled runway for both ski and wheels. And now we've, of course, moved to Phoenix, which we designed as the world's first deep snow runway, which is 100 feet of snow on top of 100 feet of ice and on top of the ocean. But that ice moves at 6 inches a day because it's an active glacier. So it's a very complicated runway that always has a moving target on it. And we, of course, work closely with the 109th to help them with their requirements of the aircraft and for the runway itself. That runway is open 365 days a year for them. And they run anywhere between 60 to 80 missions to the South Pole every year.
Yeah, great. So suffice it to say, you've got a long history of working with them and kind of developing these firsts in terms of landing on ice and snow and so forth. But before, I kind of want to talk about the call and when it came in. But first, just for people to understand, tell us about the LC-130. I mean, I know you talked about the size of it a little bit, but kind of how it's used and how even it differs from the C-130 and so forth.
Yeah, great question. So the LC-130, the main difference is that, of course, has skis on. Those skis on the main landing gear are 12 feet long, 6 feet wide. So basically looks like big pontoons underneath it. And then the front ski underneath the nose is 10 feet long, 6 feet wide. And what they do is they retract those and put those all the way down below the wheels. And they actually land with those down on snow and somewhat icy surfaces. The important thing to know for an LC to land on skis is that it actually needs to have snow on top of ice if they're landing on ice, because you don't want to rip apart the ski material itself. So because there's only 10 of those aircraft in operation within the U.S. military, we try to make sure that we are safe in every aspect we can to protect the ski and protect the aircraft.
Sure.
That aircraft can carry up to 45,000 pounds. Not that it does regularly. We try to keep it between 25 and 30,000 pounds, but they can, and they have a distance of travel up to 1,300 miles that they can travel.
And these, of course, are cargo planes. So, I mean, these would be used to transport cargo logistics in cold regions.
Yeah, cargo and personnel, right? Like everybody likes to sit on an old mat and ride down to Antarctica.
Yeah, right, exactly. So this call comes in to you. So first of all, they're doing an exercise up in the region of the Northwest Territories of Canada, and can you tell us about the exercise and then the phone call that you got?
Yeah, so the exercise they were focusing on was just trying to prove that the capabilities of not only the 109th, but also the capabilities of multiple other military groups about being able to traverse in the Northern Territory and what that would look like if they had to move a small team in the northern environment. And they wanted to document all the issues that they would run into. And the first, of course, is how do we get people in and out? How do we get equipment in and out? So they took Twin Otters in and brought in some snow machines to try to do some initial grooming of a potential skiway area. And this is, of course, when they ran into the issue of during the reconnaissance side of it, we don't have enough ice.
Mm-hmm.
So they were really they'd been there for 2.5 weeks. By the time we got the phone call asking if we had any ideas of what we could do to help them. First off, they wanted to just try to reduce the required thicknesses of the sea ice, which I'm less prone to want to even consider until we do more testing on that. But we did know that we had some other options out there, including freshwater ice, which the 109th had never done before. So this was also like it was a first for them. But freshwater ice has a lot of other issues that happens, such as cracking on the surface, which they're not used to seeing on sea ice. So there's a lot of teaching that had to go back and forth about what to expect, what to see, how to test, and then how to relay this all live so that we can make decisions being here, stateside versus out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
How do we safely land this aircraft if we could do it? And that's kind of how this started. As a call between the SLACO, which is the ski landing control officer, and us. So here within ERDC, we actually train the SLACOs on how to go out and measure the sea ice, what to look for on the sea ice, and then how to operate when they're there, right? So how long they can leave a plane, because we have things like creep that takes place in ice, as well as the heat transfer, which we always have to worry about.
Sure.
So those are all things that we're constantly trying to teach them about, keep them up to speed with what the latest is and what we know.
And I think you told me this wasn't like you didn't even know at the time this exercise was going on, right? This is a call you just got out of the blue. All of a sudden, hey, we don't have enough sea ice. What do we do?
Yeah, I didn't know that they were actually operating
Yeah.
a mission in the high north at that time. So that I got a phone call on a weekend. It was a Saturday, and basically that's when we got kicked into gear that we had to try if we could, how could we help them? But that's the relationship that we've been lucky enough to form with these agencies to be the reliance for creating the safe environment for them and their aircraft.
So this idea, again, freshwater ice, it hadn't been done, this landing before. How did you,
Right.
why come up with the idea? I mean, I guess it's something that maybe y'all thought about before, kind of kicked around.
Oh yeah.
But kind of how did you come to that idea? And then what was their response when you said, hey, how about freshwater?
So it's an idea that we've always known about freshwater ice being stronger. We've done a lot of research in that area to know that, especially historically. The people that came before me for years, they had done a lot of research on freshwater versus seawater formed ice, and that's really always in the back of our mind about potential landing, how we could do it. Now, before this, freshwater and seawater had the same criteria for landing. It always needed 54 inches of ice. And what we were proposing in this scenario was far less, right?
Mhm.
So we were proposing between 36 and 39 inches on average of ice. So it was a big change. Now, the 109th had never landed on freshwater ice, and the idea of reducing the requirements on their aircraft, they didn't really care whether it was freshwater or saltwater. It was just reducing the requirements. So they just they really didn't know how to go about that. So we
Mm.
started that process of what approvals we would need to have, how we would get that in the field, and then of course all the documentation behind why this was a safe and potentially worthwhile event to take place. Basically, it was a test for us, right? It was a test to
Yeah.
prove that we could do it. We had never in the past documented an aircraft landing on this reduced amount of ice thickness on freshwater or sea ice. So this is a big deal for us too, right? It's another data point that we were very, very firmly in belief that this was safe, but it's just now been proven.
So taking again this theoretical concept in a sense, something, an idea, but it hadn't been tested before, getting to see it tested in the real world. I mean, did that make this more exciting or meaningful? And what were the emotions like as this is
I,
happening?
I mean,
Scary?
we were running on high emotions. Yeah, the definitely the Arctic operations team here was definitely like high emotions during that time. Very nervous that things could go wrong, and right up to the last second, we were trying to figure out about cracks and monitoring the cracks that were running perpendicular to the runway. What were they doing over time? Because the unit had been there for 109th, had been on the ice at this point for about a week and a half preparing the surface. So very nervous about that. There's also questions that we ran into from the flight commanders for the 109th about, well, how can we test this beforehand to make sure that it's safe for our aircraft? So we quickly developed a test plan, right? And of course, like this is all in the matter of a week, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't have time to plan this out. This is very much like a rapid response to the current ongoing events that they had going on. And We came up with a test plan, how to load the sea ice, load the freshwater ice, very similar to how we would load sea ice. And we did that by essentially putting dead load out there, which ended up being twin otters, as well as some other Chinook helicopters to get the load up. Now, we weren't loading in the same exact orientation as what the aircraft would be loading the ice, but I guess that's where it comes in between the military side and us, that we knew that, but we knew how to safely test this, but they just wanted to see a load out there. So that's how we accomplished the feat of getting all the approvals on that end.
And like you said, I guess there's a little bit more high stress. There's only, I think you said 10 of these aircraft. And so,
Yes.
while you're testing and trying to push the boundaries, you also can't afford for it to go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, these aircraft are already under contract to work for the National Science Foundation, both in Greenland and in Antarctica. So all 10 are in rotation of some sort. So while this is taking place, they were actually still running missions in Antarctica to McMurdo Station and South Pole. So there was only 2 of these aircraft in the area for support to each other. So that's also important to know, is like these are very critical aircraft for the mission space that they have, and every risk that could be a risk, we had to make sure that we were taking the time to make sure that it was being looked into to reduce the risk.
Yeah, sure. So kind of going back to the story of the event and kind of stepped away from it a little bit. So they've done the testing. Tell us
Yep.
about kind of the end. So they've loaded the Chinooks and the Twin Otters to test it, and then
Yep.
what happened then, and kind of how did you experience all of it?
Yeah, so they actually ended up getting within a relatively small area. They were actually getting quite compact, able to load the ice to 150,000 pounds, which to us was just making sure that the 109th felt comfortable with loading freshwater ice. They've never loaded freshwater ice. It makes cracking sounds. It makes sounds underneath it. We were operating in 12 feet of water underneath, so it wasn't especially deep in this area, right? So all these things are new to them. And so the Slakos, who are ultimately in charge of safe aircraft landings, we're having to train them. This is okay. Keep going forward. Don't stop. You guys are operating fine. But as you load freshwater ice, it does react differently. So what does that look like, right? And of course, we're still actively investigating. What does a true failure mechanism look like for freshwater ice? If we were to overload, what would happen? We aren't quite sure because we have never personally done that.
Yeah,
Knock on wood.
yeah, sure. Right.
But that's how we started the process of loading the ice. Once it was loaded, all the aircraft stayed on the ground for 4 hours while everybody walked around on the ice to become comfortable with the situation and show that it wasn't going to break. Nothing was happening. We went and monitored the cracks as well. The Slakos went out there and measured them, make sure they weren't changing significantly, and that there was no additional new cracks being formed from the loading. And they landed right upon the ski landing area. So it's right where the aircraft would be coming in. Nothing really changed. So then we on our side, ERDC gave the go-ahead that this was safe. We signed off on our end, to the engineering, that this was a safe landing zone and that they could bring in the aircraft. And that's, of course, when the 109th decided they were going to try to push the limits as well on their end to see how much load they could actually get on the ice. So we started off with a 115,000 pound aircraft. That's almost basically empty plus fuel. And then worked our way up in 5,000 pound increments.
How did you experience the landing?
So I was here in the office at Corral, looking at it through a phone as they were FaceTiming me. The landing from the Slakos point of view, as it came in. Now they were halfway down the skiway landing area, so to make sure that we could tell them immediately if there was a problem. Luckily, there was minimal delay, but it was very granular in its vision.
Yeah.
But because there's nothing major going on, we also had to determine, I guess, one thing I overlooked here is we also determined the safe travel speed, right? Traversing it on the actual snowpack,
Sure.
and on top of the ice. So we have to worry about rollers taking place and what that looks like underneath the surface of the ice. So we had to determine all of that. And at this ice thickness, we determined that they had to drop below 30 knots as quickly as they could, travel speed. So they were going very fast and dropped it very quickly. So that whole motion of events that had to take place is the Slako being in direct contact with the pilot, who was then listening to what we were saying on our end of it to make sure everything was okay. But magically, it all worked together thanks to technology now, right? even way out there. Um, we were able to really be part of it, but that's what really made this quite emotional on our end is, and high stress is that we weren't basically there to actually tell them the things that we didn't really explain to them in the first place, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
not trying to overwhelm the pilot because these are literally the Slakos are just pilots, right? Pilots and navigators, and they just have additional training courses that make them a Slako. So these guys are really trusting us where their primary mission space, of course, is to fly the aircraft, that we're not going to put them in a situation where the aircraft's going to be, or personnel on board are going to be in jeopardy.
Sure.
So a lot of trust across the board on this one.
Yeah. The emotion once you saw it, is it relief? Did you kind of cheer a little bit? What'd you do? How'd you?
There was definitely some cheering from our end here, but also like some heavy sighs of relief.
Yeah.
I mean, management was always in favor of us. That all along we had all the faith in the world, but until that plane actually comes down, like you're always a little bit
Yeah.
on the edge, right? And you experienced this before, like with Phoenix when I was on board the aircraft for the first landing, which of course is just another sensation of like, oh boy, do I really trust what I'm doing here?
Yeah, sure. Full faith there.
Yeah.
Even after the landing, you said there was a little ice creep you had to keep watching too, as far as how long it stayed on the ice and so forth.
Right. So we have to worry about ice creep, but we also have the setting time, how long the aircraft would actually be down for whatever mission they were loading and unloading at the time, but also the traveling speed. So how fast they were traversing on and off as for takeoff. And then, of course, like how smooth were they able to get the actual skiway? Because that makes a difference. This aircraft, another unique part of the LC-130 is it can be outfitted with JATO, which is jet assisted takeoff. They didn't have any of that there because they had full faith that they could groom the skiway completely smooth. So that was another concern that we had, is how smooth is the skiway.
Yeah.
And then also, like the very first landing was a very quick turn, and then they burned and took off again just to make sure that everything was okay. And then we had another inspection of the entire landing strip take place, make sure cracks and everything was still as it was measured beforehand, which it was. So then they had a second aircraft come in that weighed 5,000 pounds heavier, and they landed that aircraft and actually unloaded the gear that they needed, food and supplies for the mission space that they had going on. And then when the third plane came, they actually unloaded the troops to go and carry out their mission further north.
Sure. In terms of the various firsts of this mission, I guess the first were first for the 109th, first time on freshwater ice. I guess that'd be the first time for an American military plane on freshwater ice, correct?
For on skis, yes,
On skis,
absolutely.
yeah,
So
sure.
yeah,
First time on less than 54 inches. New methodology.
first time at that load for any aircraft that we know of in the world on that end. So we really reduced the ice thickness requirements. A lot of other countries rely on our requirements for what safe snow and ice requirements are for the aircraft. So this is the first documented time that we know of where an aircraft of 120,000 pounds landed on less than 54 inches of ice.
And I think you'd even told me before, like, I think maybe Canadian Royal Air Force had done freshwater ice,
Yeah.
but to do it, they had to pump in the ice, and it took 10,000 man hours or something. I mean, this was the first time doing that level of ice.
Yes, that's a good point. So 2018, the Royal Canadian Air Force had put together a big mission where they actually pumped fresh water on top of an existing lake to build their freshwater ice up because they couldn't find a location that was at 54 inches. So they actually added 23 inches of water that they froze in 1-inch lifts on top. And that took over 10,000 hours, and they had over 100 troops on the ground doing it. But they were actually able to successfully land on fresh water. But it did take a lot of time. So
Yeah.
they did land a very similar aircraft, one of their C-130 variants that they have on the ice, and were able to do it at 54 inches, which, of course, we know, but they were able to make it. So that was a first for them.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the $1,000,000 question, now we've kind of talked about all the history of this. Why does this matter? Why does it matter to the military being able to land in freshwater ice?
So not only the freshwater ice, but the reduced ice thickness, the two combined together, right? We are actually opening up another 20 to 22% of potential landing zones in the north, right? So areas that are kind of pushing those limits, pushing the fight out further, we can now reach out there, right? We've proven that we can do that. And with minimal modification and grooming to the surfaces, we can land pretty large aircraft, moderately large aircraft to get in there and actually bring in larger groomers for heavier aircraft to establish. We've known for a long time that as long as we have the ice thickness and we can groom, we can bring in heavy wheeled aircraft, such as C-17, like we do in Antarctica. But now knowing that naturally we can find environments further north that we don't have to modify, and relatively short time, get a landing area in and troops on the ground, bring the fight forward, we really can make a difference. So that opens up a ton of different landing areas now and potentials.
Yeah, sure. Talk about how this effort has built on historic research done at Krell through the years.
Yeah, absolutely. So, dating back to the '60s, we've had a long list of individuals that have really pushed the boundaries of ice. From Dr. Dev Sodi and George Blaisdell and Kevin Biela. We've really pushed the boundaries of what we know about ice and ice research. And because of the work that has come really before us, we were able to build upon it, pull all these different pieces together, and build upon our relationship that we have with the 109th, to where they trust us and know that we can use what we've determined in the past is safe in different applications, in different fields, right? So this was really the culmination of 50 years worth of research coming together to showcase on a very large scale, high risk, when you think about losing a potential aircraft with personnel on board, to showcase what we can do as a larger entity.
Yeah, sure. And then also building on other expertise around ERDC, because you all worked with the Geotechnical Structures Laboratory, Airfield, the Pavements branch as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We have a very strong relationship with GSL and with their airfields and pavements group, as well as the rapid repair groups that they have there, and Jeb Tingle especially. Without his help and support, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are with being able to support the Air Force. So all those relationships have really, we wouldn't be able to do any of this without the support of them.
Sure. So what's next now that they've successfully landed on a freshwater ice? Kind of where do you go from there?
Well, the boring first steps are documenting everything, making sure that this can now get into new requirements and regulations for the Air Force to open up those new areas, right? And then the exciting side of this is now we're looking into, well, if we can do that on ice, can we reduce the requirements for not only freshwater, but also sea ice? So looking into that. And then as well as, can we land in different types of scenarios, right? Can we land on a previously demolished runway with snow and ice cover on top of it? Could we do that instead of having to build an entire another runway? So that's really the things that we're starting to look into. The 109th is very excited about where we're looking to go. Of course, their business model is now very excited because they can do a lot more.
Right.
So we've really opened up a lot of more opportunities, and their relationships they have. They have a very close relationship with the National Science Foundation, and this allows them to get science and researchers further out in the field on these reduced ice requirements.
Yeah, sure. And I believe maybe some work with some allied nations out of this as well. Maybe you said some interest in Canada, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so we do have a very close relationship with our Canadian counterpart, and we train them regularly on how to operate in the snow and ice environments for airfields, especially. So we'll be working with them as well on the reduced requirements and how to implement that in a safe way for them as well.
And other aircraft too. Can you take some of this and apply it to other aircraft?
Yeah. So we can apply it to other aircrafts and other loads, which is larger scale. What we're hoping to do is rewrite the landing weight requirements for multiple aircraft. And of course, moving to smaller, stealthier fighter type aircrafts as well, if we can. So that's really where the future of this is going.
Sure.
The first steps was determining that we could actually, in fact, reduce requirements.
Yeah. Sure. Anything I hadn't covered that you want to make sure you mention about this effort?
No, I just want to reiterate that, it was a big team effort on this. And we really couldn't have done it without the past work that had been done and with our relationships with our other laboratories as well. This really was the culmination of a lot of people effort. We did all this within 1 week. And if you think about that, to be able to land an aircraft on 19 inches less ice, that's impressive to me.
Yeah.
And then it actually convinced the military that this was a safe endeavor and that we weren't crazy. That's the other part of this. It's years of a good relationship and good rapport and good projects in the past.
Sure. And last question, but we're talking about relationships, 109th and our relationship strong. I think you said recently you've even started work on another project with them. I guess you got lots of projects with them, but that continues.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we do. So we are rewriting. I do have some team members, Dr. Katie DeDominic, who is actually working on rewriting their requirements for how to train SLACOs, their ski landing control officers. But we also, on the exciting part of it, working on developing a stateside ski landing certification.
Wow. Yeah.
So, which would be the first as well. So, we're working on doing that with the 109th, because right now what happens is they actually have to travel to Greenland to become certified as a pilot on snow and ice. I mean, if we can do that stateside, we're reducing logistic restraints and constraints and all the issues that come with that, and certify a lot more pilots.
Yeah. Sure. That's great. Well, thanks, DJ. Thanks for joining us. It's an interesting topic and historic aviation first. So that's great.
I'm always excited about this. This gets me excited all the time.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think I think it's an awesome accomplishment what you and your team did. So,
well, thank you.
Appreciate you
Thank you.
sharing more about it. And that's all we have for today. We thank everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Power of ERDC podcast.